I've been bullish about stock markets now for a little over 2 years, and coming into this year, I'm thinking to myself, should I start to temper that optimism? But for the moment, I'm sticking with the bullish tack. I don't yet see the sort of characteristics that I would normally see at the top of the markets. I think that valuations, they're no longer cheap, but I don't think that they're extended. I don't see the sort of behavior that you see at tops. The flows into equities on a global basis really only started in the last quarter of last year. And I still see quite a lot of caution around amongst investors starting to dissipate. But that all makes me think that probably we're all right. And maybe later this year or probably next year that I'll have to temper my optimism. I think the trends this year are going to be very much a replay of the trends of last year. So I see money continuing to flow from investors in the developed world into emerging markets and into particularly this region, Hong Kong and China. But I think that they will accelerate this year. So I think that the flows will pick up. And I think that has big implications. I'm very much a believer in the story you heard this morning about the bipolar world, the two-speed world, the developed world growing below trend because of the overhang of the financial crisis, having to readjust to put balance sheets right, means that for a few years growth in the West is going to be low. Now that does have some effect on emerging markets, but I still think that they can grow fast. And actually that tension between a fast-growing emerging market and a slow-growing developed world, I think it's not a stable environment. I think it produces a certain instability. Now, I've got some observations about the outlook in China and Hong Kong, and please bear in mind I am a relatively new boy here, so I'm talking, I know a lot of you in the audience will have followed these markets for longer than I have. But my observations are this. I'm strongly a believer that the driver of Chinese growth is changing. I mean, we've heard this morning. The mayor of Chongqing was also talking about this. That, it was about exports. It was about low-value manufacturing. China was the manufacturing base for the world. I think the Chinese authorities see that this isn't sustainable, or they want to make themselves less reliable or reliant on the West, and particularly America. And therefore, consumption and services are going to be the big growth areas over the next 5 to 10 years. I think that has very important investment implications about where you should be invested. And I think there's still big long-term upside in the service businesses in China in more value-added areas. And I'm less keen on companies that are big exporters that are particularly low-value manufacturing. I'm also a bit less keen on some of the infrastructure and commodity plays. I think they've done they've done their work, and I don't necessarily think they're going to be the story over the next 5 years.